Hey, welcome to OT Asset Management Weekly on Election Day. If you are a US citizen and haven't voted yet, just stop watching that live stream, go cast your vote, and check out the recording that you will find on YouTube, X, and LinkedIn. Today we'll talk about active OT discovery and if it is dangerous, as some suggest. Before I make my case, let's spend a couple of minutes discussing, well, why would you use active OT discovery if so many people think it's dangerous and scare you? Well, there's a very simple reason for that. If you don't use active discovery for your OT networks, you will never arrive at a useful OT asset inventory. And certainly you can call me biased because in our product, OT-based, we're only using active discovery, but there is a reason for that. And actually, there are a couple of reasons for that. But maybe the easiest way to understand why you must use active discovery, there's no way around it if you want to arrive at a useful asset inventory. It's a very simple detail. Otherwise, you will never get a decent network inventory. What do I mean by that? So in OT, you're not facing 5 or 10 or a dozen networks. You're facing hundreds, maybe thousands of networks, depending on the size of your corporation. In OT-based, you will see all those individual networks exposed in the network inventory with their network address, with their location, with their specific zone, with their type. And if you do a drill down, you will also see an IP address list and additional data. You will see all the endpoints in a particular network. And certainly you can, from there, you can also drill down and check out the individual device. And this is something that I suggest you think about, because if you think you have an OT asset inventory and it doesn't tell you about network association, it doesn't know about network identity, then that's useless. It's pretty much useless. That's the long and short of it. So you will not be able to do your vulnerability management, as an example, in any meaningful way. You will not be able to engage in network segregation, etc. So therefore, there is no way around active discovery, and that's why we're doing it. And so I just wanted to give you the rationale why it's so important. And then, well, you always hear these concerns, even in 2024, and you may wonder, well, should I dare to actually check it out or not? And today I'm going to discuss an argument that was made at the S4 conference earlier this year in Miami, where a researcher presented a case study that he did. Let me just pull this up. So you will find that on the S4 YouTube channel. And here is that video, PLCs to scan or not to scan. And he presented an argument that I am going to refute, but just as a point of reference, so this is where you can find it. Before we get into the details, and I promise you, we'll get deep into the details, just a thing about terminology. So to scan or not to scan, this is a bit misleading. It will get you into the weeds because the term scanning is actually loaded. It refers to many things that are not related. Usually when you hear the term scanning in the context of discovery, you would think about the classic IT tools such as Nmap, Nessus, etc. You would probably also think about proprietary tools from vendors such as Qualys, for example, okay? And in that space, the term scanning as a discovery technology refers to an approach where the tool opens hundreds or even thousands of TCP or UDP ports on the endpoint that it's trying to discover. and then assembles all kinds of data and tries to make sense out of that data. So that is one approach that is prevalent in the IT space, and that has caused some trouble in the OT space, and therefore we are not doing it. So when you look at the active discovery as implemented in OT base, it works completely different. We're using legitimate industrial protocols. So we are calling legitimate functions that are designed to yield the asset information that we are, that we're interested in. And that's so it's very, very much targeted, and it doesn't open that does not open all these additional network ports. It's really very, very limited. So that's one thing. The other thing that will probably confuse you is I'm going to talk about the PLC cycle time. That's the problem on the table in this particular case, and unfortunately, the PLC cycle time is sometimes also called the PLC scan time. So that's another cause for confusion. So why is it called scan time? Because if you consider the how a modern PLC works, it always starts. It works in an endless loop, and this endless loop always starts with reading all the inputs, the physical inputs that are connected to that PLC. And that process is also referred to as scanning. It's scanning the inputs, right? And therefore the term scan cycle. This is a bit misleading, but you will find it in literature. And I just want to let you know I'm not going to use that term because it is misleading. I will talk about cycle time, which is a little bit easier to understand. And just for starters, especially for those from IT, how does that PLC actually work? A digital PLC executes a program in a cycle, in an endless loop. And that loop starts with reading the inputs, performing any logical operations, and then writing to the output image. And then at the end of that cycle, that output image is just pushed to the physical outputs. And then you will see all the respective actuators being set to a new state. And then the whole thing starts from the beginning. So that's the full loop. And this argument that we are going to discuss is based on the premise, well, we have made an experiment and we have seen that in some cases this active discovery might cause delays in that loop. So the next time so the full continuation until the next start of the loop might take longer, and that might disrupt or a process or have negative impact on a process. So if we go back to the talk, this is the relevant slide in that talk, impact on scan time. So you remember what scan time in this case means. It actually means cycle time. And he has done a couple of variations. He has used different tools. As far as I can tell, it's not about OT base, but I don't know. He's just referencing tool A and tool B. I cannot tell. No, I can't. As far as I can tell, the OT base is not tool A, which causes this issue here, the 55% increase in percent. In the mean scan time, I translate cycle time during the scan period or during the cycle, okay? 55% increase, and that is bad in his opinion. And he also makes the point in respect to inferential statistics. According to the Brunner-Mansell test, this is bad. No, not Wilcoxon rank sum test. No, we don't use that. That's irrelevant for some reason. But the Brunner-Mansell test, that tells you it's bad. And sometimes somehow I have the feeling that this BS about the various tests has just frozen the memory of all the people that have watched this talk to not see why this is absolutely meaningless. So the numbers that he presents, absolutely meaningless. If you haven't seen it, I will tell you why. So this is what the argument boils down to. Active discovery may have an impact on the cycle time of a PLC, as evidenced by this result here, 55% increase on an S7-1200, and that may impact the process. And there was an additional argument made on LinkedIn. So Dale Peterson had posted another snippet of this talk. And he made, again, he boiled down his argument: increased deviations from the expected range beyond the day-to-day fluctuations or in compound with them may affect process control, to which I respond, that's patently false. And I'm going to explain you why it is patently false, okay? So let's go into the details. First, what is a Siemens S7-1200? You see one here. You can buy the thing on Amazon for $300, less than $300. And that's usually what the stuff that is used in those research projects, because certainly you want to keep the budget low. And then you end up with these micro PLCs. Now, the thing with such a micro PLC, to start with, it does not have a dedicated communications processor. And that means that all the work, the burden on the processing also of the communications interface relies on the CPU. And only because of that, you would expect that communications will put an extra demand on the CPU. So you would expect to see changes in cycle time when certain communication happens, okay? So that's one thing. And the other thing, before we go further into details, that we would expect something like this to happen probably. The question is going to be, is it meaningful? We will look at that in a second. But before we go there, I think one misconception that our researcher is having is that it would or that in normal operations, cycle time would be pretty much static. And that's nonsense. That is not a thing. For various reasons. So the easiest reason would be, well, you execute conditional logic, right? So if the inputs look like so, certain values on your thermometer readings, or if a specific timer expires, so like a task that is scheduled to run every 2 seconds. Then you enter a specific routine for handling this situation. You have to do a couple of other computations and manipulations for actuators, etc. You might you might call a bunch of function blocks, etc. Certainly, that's going to affect the cycle time. Yes, absolutely. So the idea that there would be a normal or like this would be static in normal operations, that is nonsense. That is not a thing. So and then certainly also the communications, especially for a micro PLC, you will see that probably in variations of cycle time. Now the question is this meaningful? And that would mean, could it have any negative impact on process control? And the simple answer is no. And I'm going to explain you why. So before we go to, I still have to lay out all the facts for making my case. Another thing that I find absolutely amazing, especially since apparently nobody picked it up. So if we, wait a second, let's go back here to this table, right? No, so this is like the gotcha moment, right? The 55% increase. And according to that stupid test that he references to, that is significantly in a statistical manner. This is significant. This is important. This might disrupt the process. But what really puzzles me is that apparently nobody bothered to check out the absolute numbers, which you can see here in this slide from the presentation. Now let's check that out. These are from that S7 1200. So this is like the underlying data that he then computed the percent values from. Now check out the absolute values. In his normal operation, we are looking at 1,000 something, probably 1,200. And guess what? This is microseconds. This is not milliseconds, it's microseconds. And then during that scan, which would be the active discovery, this goes up significantly to more than, roughly 2,000 microseconds. So that means the increase that we're talking about is less than 1 millisecond. Where I would already say, bro, what process are you controlling? Where you would be afraid that this less than 1 millisecond delay would cause any trouble. Is this about a safety system at a nuclear power plant where you're using an S7 1200, or what are you talking about? So in absolute numbers, you can already tell, well, that's a nothing burger. However, hear me out. So no, we are not nearly finished. No, it's getting better. So the other thing that I find very interesting, especially that nobody picked it up already, you're telling me your normal cycle time is a little bit over a millisecond. What does this PLC program actually look like? Does it increase a counter or two? Because apparently it does nothing real. So this is probably the tiniest PLC program that you have seen for quite a while, and it shouldn't even be a surprise, because in an experimental setting, I would expect that in your test bed you don't have, I don't know, 50 sensors and 20 actuators connected, which would probably also be a stretch for a 1200. But apparently that's not a real life PLC program that's executing. So let's just say, so I'm inviting you to conduct a thought experiment here with me. So let's just say this would look like more real life, and the average cycle time outside of the active discovery stage would be around, let's just say 10 or 20 milliseconds. Well, not unusual for 1200. Remember, we are talking about a micro PLC for $300. So, but this is a product that you would use to control an escalator. Right? This is not something that you would usually see in a manufacturing environment. But anyhow, just bear with me. So let's just assume in our thought experiment, a normal cycle time would be 10 or 20 milliseconds. What would happen to this increase in the cycle time when we do our active discovery? I predict the delta in absolute numbers will be the same, less than a millisecond. What does that mean for this table? Your percentage goes down to, I don't know, 1% or something. And the whole thing falls together as a nothing burger. So I really don't get it how somebody who pesters you with the inferential statistics and this test and the other test, that he's presenting such bogus data. 55%, that means nothing. So you have to look at the absolute numbers where you would see, well, it's insignificant. It's less than a millisecond. And now let's just throw in some other contextual aspects here. The other thing that I would like to consider, the Siemens S7-1200 again has no embedded or has no dedicated communications processor, and so therefore it is quite usual for those micro PLCs that you can specify the yield that communications tasks can take away from the CPU. You see that in this Siemens document. You see that down here, configuring the cycle time and communication load. So when you configure the controller, you can specify the cycle load due to communication as a percent value. Unfortunately, we have no information how this value was configured for the experiment. Was it set to 50%? I don't know, 10%, 5%, 100%, probably not. But I just want to point out, so this is, without this information, there is no way to actually make sense out of the data that was presented. The other thing that I want to point you to in the Siemens document is you do have a minimum cycle time and a maximum cycle time. And the minimum cycle time is disabled by default. And what does that mean? The minimum cycle time. Here is what that means. So if you specify a minimum cycle time, excuse me, let's just say we set it to 2 milliseconds. Then the CPU will pause operation for any amount of time before that 2 millisecond mark is reached, and then only start the next cycle. Okay? And that would also mean, in our example, let's just say, come on. Let's just say we had set the minimum cycle time to 2 milliseconds. You will probably not notice any difference. And now, if you are under the impression, oh, you know, he's trying to present a case here to sneak out. No, that's not the case. Minimum cycle time is actually a thing that is used by control engineers because it makes execution more predictable. And predictability is all what matters. And I'll get back to that later, trust me, my friends. It's all that matters in control. Otherwise, you don't have control. And because, so in a nutshell, control is not stochastic. Where you would, what our researcher is pointing, there is a deviation in statistics. That has nothing to do with control. In control, it's about predicting this operation will be finished exactly at that moment in time. And this is why the minimum cycle time is actually often used by control engineers, because it will result in a much more reliable cycle. And the idea, no, let's not set a minimum cycle time because then it's running as fast as it can. That is not a thing in control. And I'll get back to that. So it all has to do with real time and with determinism. But the other thing that I want to focus you already on is the maximum cycle time. Okay, maximum cycle time is a value, and that is what actually matters when it comes to control. So this is where the control engineer says, I must guarantee, or this project, this PLC project must guarantee that one cycle is finished, is executed in full, at least within 150 milliseconds. That is the thing that counts, okay? And this is a determination that the control engineer makes based on the specific machinery, based on the process. That is not something that is inside the realm of IT or networking, etc. This is why you have control engineers, guys. And the control engineer's job, among other things, is to make sure that the maximum cycle time is set properly. And as you can see here in the Siemens document, the default is 150 milliseconds. That's a stretch from our 2 milliseconds execution in the example that was presented. So, and by the way, I already have to warn you, today I'm going into overtime because I think this is an important subject. If you have to bail out in 4 minutes, then I invite you to just go back to the recording on X, YouTube, or LinkedIn. So, this is what matters, the maximum cycle time. You can, on the 1200, you can set it to 6 seconds if you want to. That's the maximum value. Does that make sense? Absolutely. And here's the thing, what some people find hard to understand. When you think about real time and control, it's not about being as fast as possible. So the one thing that you have to get into your head is that there is analog control and there is digital control. Analog control, like in the old days, today you only find it in very rare instances. Analog control is continuous. So there is no cycle in analog, right? It always executes in a continuum. For digital control, that's not the case. Digital control that executes a program in memory, so it's executed by a CPU, that is discrete. That's discrete control. And it all comes down to those time slices. And the whole concept of control relies on the idea that you can predict that at a specific point in time, this action will be taken and it will be completed. Right? So that is determinism in digital control. And now here is the fun part. It doesn't matter. Just for the concept of control, and for process control per se, it doesn't matter if that time or that period is 5 microseconds or if it's 10 minutes. A cycle time, so I mean, I'm obviously using an extreme example that's not realistic, but even a 10-minute cycle time would be real time if it matches the process characteristics that need to be matched at that specific point in time, 10 minutes out. That's still real time, guys. Get it in your head. Right? It's not gotta be more or less continuous. That's not a thing. So this is what you need to get into your head. And now the threshold is the dividing line where you lose control. That is when max cycle time is blown, is exceeded. What happens then? Well, that's very simple. Then the PLC goes into an error state and the outputs are de-energized. Okay, so it pretty much goes into a safe state and lets you know, well, there's a problem. You have just blown max cycle time. And this is not something that would be hidden. There is this secret process manipulation that you would not discover for a couple of weeks. No, everybody will know it immediately because the process will discontinue. Production will stop. You will experience an unplanned outage. As simple as that. Okay. So the control engineer's job is to make sure that the maximum cycle time that he or she has defined for this process, for this part of the process that this PLC controls is never exceeded. And as long as that criterion is matched, the PLC can do all kinds of things in the meantime. And when the scanning is finished, the PLC can mine Bitcoin if it need be. It doesn't matter. It does not have a negative impact on the process. Guys, get that into your head. That is why you have control engineers and not IT geniuses. They are using different concepts. That is now we are in control territory. And this is what the control engineer determines. Okay, this is what I need to provide in order for the process to run reliably and probably even safely, in a safe manner when we are talking about safety systems, okay? So as long as you don't blow maximum cycle time, who cares? It doesn't matter. The impact is zero, absolutely zero. It's nothing. And because otherwise you would have to fire the control engineer, and that's not a thing that I've ever seen in the past, that a control engineer didn't configure a maximum cycle time properly. Okay, good. So the other thing that puzzles me too a bit is when we go back to the question, well, why? I mean, why are we looking at in this particular case that was presented, why are we even talking about that less than 1 millisecond increase in cycle time due to the communications? So you remember, we have no idea how that communications time slice is configured for this project. And the other thing that we see, and you see that on the various Wireshark screenshots that our researcher presents, why all these TCP retransmissions? And also I have to ask you, why has nobody pointed that out already? So, and you see that on the other examples that were shared in the same way. Why all these retransmissions? So this suggests to me, as the layperson, I mean, is this guy running his experiment on a wireless network where the access point is 3 miles away, or what? What's going on there? So that, my point is that this is obviously not an environment that would in any way resemble what you would find in a factory environment. So I find this rather bizarre, to say the least, and also that apparently our researcher himself not even realizes, oh no, probably before I do that presentation I should check out my network. Well, why so many network errors? Let me sum up my case. What I think is rather a disadvantage is two things. That people in 2024 still think, active discovery, that's dangerous. And I could even use the same presentation and argue the total opposite. I mean, look at the results here. He has even used Nmap, default and modified, whatever that means, and well, no impact. Wow. Haven't you always been told, no, don't use Nmap, no, that's dangerous? No impact. No evidence, no evidence. So I could use the same data and make my point. Here you have it, right? It's safe. And but certainly that's not my argument. But I'm just saying it is really mind-boggling that this argument is still presented, that you should not engage in active discovery because it would be so dangerous and unsafe. Guys, you have been fooled. And the one thing that I find rather sad is that there are not more experts in our community who point out the BS, who point out that the numbers don't match up, that they don't make any sense. I find this rather mind-boggling. And maybe the only conclusion or advice I can draw from this is, guys, if you actually want to be in OT security, then make sure that you have some friends among the control engineers and discuss your stuff, your concepts, etc., with those control engineers. Please make friends with them, because you can learn a lot from them. And so that would be my advice to you guys, and that we can just get out of the baloney and all those smoke screens, right? Because we have to. I mean, if you look at OT security as a whole, we have made so little progress in protection. We have large progress in detection in order to just have hundreds of people working full time to identify false positives. That's not efficient. And we have made so little progress in protection because of because the foundation is missing. The foundation is a contextualized, comprehensive OT asset inventory, and you will never get it without active discovery. Sorry to tell you, sorry to break it to you. So this is my case, and if you want to learn more, I hope you do, I would like to point you to additional literature. So you can find additional material on our resources page. So if you go to langner.com, click on resources, there you will find the OT Asset Discovery Handbook, where you will get an explanation of how active discovery actually works in OT base, why it is safe and secure, why it is not dangerous. And if you want to go all in and make up your own mind, here's the best thing you can do. You click on evaluation, and here you can download a copy of OT base discovery. So that's the discovery piece of OT base. And you just let it run in your test bed. And I predict what you're going to see. Oh, everything's still running fine. So maybe before you click on the probe button, you who knows? Can I trust these guys? And then thereafter you say, oh no, that's actually much better than I thought. You will see all the asset details already here in this table. And then you can make up your own mind. And also, I urge you, probably this is going to be inevitable, but I urge you to discuss this with your control engineers and let them make up their own mind and see, well, I promise you what you're going to see is, oh, that's a cool tool. I want to keep it. I want to use it for my own purposes. So that is what I wanted to talk about today, in the interest of getting beyond the nonsense and probably, hopefully, educating you to some degree on why certain things work and why certain technologies and concepts are absolutely not a problem at all. You have just been fooled into thinking that they would be so dangerous, etc. But when you go into the details, and this is my my final plea to you, please go into the details. Just don't take the word of the next presentation at a conference or the next white paper from an OT threat detection vendor. Don't take them just just don't take the statements as gospel or even as real. Make up your own mind. Check out the underlying technology, the concepts, etc., and best case, check it out for yourself, which is easy to do with the evaluation software. So I had to get that out, and I hope you will benefit from it. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.